Hi, I'm the creator of Onar. I'm one of three people working on the project, and tomorrow I fly to GDC to meet with publishers about our indie game, Onar. It's a 3D fighting game. We've been developing it for the last sort of year and a half. In total, we did some earlier kind of prototypes before that, trying to work out what we wanted to make, and then sort of Onar became it became more focused on what it was going to be about a year and a half ago. It's myself. I'm more of a generalist on the project, and then we also have a Gary, programmer, who's just cares about the code, and then Kyle, animator, who just cares about character motion, animation stuff, and then I do everything in between and a bit of coding and animation at times as well. So basically, what I want to do is show you the game, talk through the game mechanics, what we're trying to do, and then what we're doing with the game at the moment is it's up on Steam as playtesting, so people can play it for free. And then you can see on our splash screen here, you can just email onarthegame@gmail.com if you had any feedback or anything. Obviously constructive criticism really helps us develop the game. We're trying to do something a little bit different. Sometimes people like that, sometimes they don't. It's really hard to know what sort of works for one person doesn't for another. So for us, we've just focused on what we love, and big fan of fighting games, going way back to like the ZX Spectrum, right through to contemporary kind of bigger budget games at the moment. So basically, Onar, I won't get into the story. I'll do other videos than that in the future. I'll do kind of how we build assets as well, and our pipeline, and how we use Unity. We use Unity URP, and then we generally create these visuals that support it in Maya or Blender or other 3D applications. We do our animation in an application called Cascadeur, and we find it really kind of fast workflow. The rigs get made in Maya, they go into Cascadeur, they get animated there, and then they go into Unity. So you can see some of these sort of like cutscene stuff. We have a story, but at the moment we're just focusing on our core kind of gameplay and what's different. So we put in a practice mode so that people can practice the game, but it also works for us to use when developing the game, because we've created a little system in the background of like swapping out different moves and distances of moves and damage and stuff like that. So this allows us to check how far something move in, or does it feel right. The game's a lot of trial and error. So basically it's 2D in its camera angle, but there's a three-dimensional aspect to moving around, kind of like Tekken or Virtua Fighter kind of things. So basically with this, what's sort of the main difference between our game and why we wanted to do something a little bit different was to create this sort of blocking mechanic that whenever you move a certain direction, it'll block. This is indicated by a little shield that sort of pops up either left or right, and you do that by pushing the stick forward or pushing the stick back, and we kind of call that depth blocking. So yeah, you can depth block. You can only block attacks from the left or block attacks from the right. You can also dodge an attack as well, so there's the ability to do some of the stuff that you can normally do in 3D fighting games, like move around, dodge attacks. The main difference between a lot of them and Onar is there's no jumping, and your fighter's always constrained to the side of whatever side you've picked at the start. So if you're the red fighter, you're always on the left, no matter how much the action kind of expands and the fight kind of unfolds, you always stay on that side. The camera always locks to that direction. We did this for a number of reasons. The main one is to do with our depth mechanic. We just wanted to keep it really clear that if you attack with your left, so which is simply your left trigger, so if you pull left trigger, you'll attack with left. You pull right trigger, you'll attack with right, and each of the moves have different speeds and distances and the usual kind of attributes you get on an attack in a fighting game. So how you have a variety of attacks, but only two triggers is that depending on what direction you're pushing the left stick at the time, you'll do a different attack. So we call these basically, if you don't move the stick and you do left right, you'll do your what we call close range attack. If you push towards a character, you'll do your long range attack. If you pull away, you'll do your evasive attack. And then depending on which direction and depth you're going, you'll do a left range attack and right range attack. So each of these attacks can always be done with either limb. So you can jump forward and do it with the left leg or do it with the right leg. And that's where the depth blocking comes in. And what we did was add a little indicator that's constrained in front of your fighter, so that when you do a left attack, you'll see that there's a little arrow there. It just helps the other player read your attack. We might put a sort of like really difficult level setting in the game where you can disable this, so you're really having to read the other person's attack. But we find from playtesting that people just could register these little arrows pointing up and down, because if you're attacking somebody, or if you're being attacked and that arrow's pointing up, what that means is that with your fighter, you've got to push up to depth block it, and it just helps you register the attack, and it can make the, in my opinion, experience feel a little bit more fun and playable. It's a visual aid, just the way your health bar is a visual aid, or the time counter is a visual aid. These things are there to make the game a little bit more sort of fun, or add a bit more drama or whatever. So that's our kind of main unique difference between most fighting game genres, or most fighting games out there. There might be things that have a mechanic like this that I don't know, like please leave a comment or let us know. I'd love to check them out and compare it. But like I said, we wanted to do something a little bit different because we are an indie studio of 3 people. We don't have a huge budget. We want to do something cool, but it's going to be impossible to compete with big franchises that, things like Mortal Kombat 1 is Mortal Kombat 12 or whatever number it is. It's like these guys have been around for a very long time. Street Fighter, Tekken, all those guys have made changes to their game and gameplay, some good and some bad, which I've seen. Like, I've been playing fighting games since the way of the exploding fist. Like, it's for a long time, and sometimes they get it right with their mechanics, and sometimes they change things and get it wrong, but they've had years of iterations. So our plan was to do something just a little bit different, just so that we had something unique to our game. Because we don't believe a 3-person team can compete in the same way, so we have to do something a little bit different. So that's our approach. So what we did was build it in Unity, and we really cared about hit distance and stuff. So if you're at a close range attack, you're not going to reach the person unless you're really in tight close. And then we spent a lot of time adding a lot of just making sure that effects weren't too overwhelming, but they were exciting enough, the sort of flashes that happen. But you'll notice, like, it snaps your character to the exact distance every time, so that you can be accurate at attacks. And the grid in the floor, like Street Fighter or whatever, is just basically our way within development to say, okay, can that attack be done from 0.9? No, it can't. Can the long range attack be done from there? Yeah. So the next sort of thing in our sort of fighter arsenal is that once you land an attack, that's when you can string together multiple attacks. And all these different attacks, which I think every fighter has 30 attacks because of the different directions you can push a stick. But basically, any of these attacks will string into any of the other attacks, but some of them push the character further away than others. So what that means is that you really have to get to know what attacks your character does and put together your order. And then there are this bar that's on the left hand side just below your health bar. That's your command attack bar. So you could do something like a fireball kind of thing. And we're going to add more of these command attacks to characters. because we're not really a zoner game, this is our sort of Shoto fighter. We call Zero at the moment, and he's literally called Zero because he was the first character in and program him. I see he was number 0 in our kind of list. So that's Zero, and he's our Shoto and our kind of mid-range all-round fighter. And he's got that kind of fireball that you would expect. Everybody's got the fireball at the moment, but we're going to add different ones as we develop the game. The little timer you see increasing at the moment is really there to make sure that people can't act like there are characters that are more like zoners, but it's so you can't stay at a far range and spam a lot of fireballs. So that's our way of keeping combat close, because the counter will increase after it, but it will also increase faster if you land attacks. So that's our way to encourage you to engage in sort of more twitch-based toe-to-toe kind of fighting. The last thing that really characters can do is activate a super move, or a power move as we're calling it, and that power move happens by pushing the bumpers, the kind of shoulder buttons. So if you press left or right, this builds up after a number of hits, and if you are able to grab them, this will play out a 3-second baked animation. Everybody's got that animation, and it's certain characters reach out and grab you quicker than others. So the characters that fall into that archetype of a grappler will grab you. It'll be a lot easier to grab you than it will be with a sort of Shoto style fighter or a kind of zoner style fighter. So because we're going for the twitch-based fighting, and it's in a lot of the times keeping combat really close, we basically have stamina bars, so that if you spam one attack a lot of the times, it'll drain. And that links to our other kind of sort of unique, I'm sure there's plenty of games with things like this, but for us it's sort of unique that we've got an attack speed. So if you're doing that jab at the moment, because you've got full health and you haven't really done anything, the attack speed is 1. But if you land an attack, or your attack speed will increase to 1.1. It's kind of like a sort of like a adrenaline boost. So what that means is if you landed an attack, somebody else hasn't landed an attack, and it's really close combat, then you'll get that competitive edge and you'll hit them sooner than they'll hit you, which cancels out their attack if you've hit them. So that's if your stamina is really low, then that attack speed might be 0.7, and you'll have to let your character recover if you really want to get back into the game. So that's the kind of breakdown of all our sort of our gameplay mechanics, and we think that's enough for us to expand with. We've got 4 archetypes available in the playtest and demo at the moment that we call our kind of Shoto character, which we call our mid-range character. Then we've got a light, we've got a bulk, and then we've got heavy, and they follow the sort of standard archetypes of the heavy character being a little bit more powerful and just a little bit slower. And their ranges all kind of relate to this, and obviously light, a little bit faster, but not as heavy hitting. So what we're doing at the moment is trying to balance the game. So the other thing I didn't actually mention was we have a ring out mechanic. So if I go back in, maybe pick somebody else. If you step outside the ring,
red versus blue.
It's kind of like a sort of a big fan of Virtua Fighter. Always love the kind of ring out parts of games as well. But if you step outside the ring, then instead of it being a ring out, and I didn't want to break the flow of the gameplay, it really gives you, I'd say, what is it, a couple of seconds to get back in again. So you can step out of the ring and then step back in again, and you won't be penalized. But if you step out for more than, I think it's 3 seconds or 1.5 seconds maybe, then there's a little timer comes up, you'll be penalized, a little bit of damage will happen, and then the game will be reset, but there'll be no break in gameplay. The fighting, we've tried to keep the fighting kind of constant and not have a break. We did play around with the idea of having one constant round, but we found it was just more enjoyable when you split the game into round 1, round 2, and then if you both draw, you get the final round, i.e. round 3. So some of the things we tried to do things that were different, and then we realized that the fighting game kind of experience is, you know, a lot of these things are there because they are actually more fun to play. So if I just go to versus and then I'll pick a game. Play a versus match against CPU. The tournament just basically takes you through all our difficulty sections. If anybody can beat the tournament, I'd love people to leave a comment or to send an email to the email address. So if I pick our mid-range fighter and maybe our bulk fighter, core, let's pick a really so a level. It's a little bit different than that kind of training level. It's not a Coliseum, we obviously have to update the text on that. It's a bit of a forest kind of level. You'll see here that we've tried to keep the palette, so color palette, you know, stylized in a way that it's, you know, all our design and our kind of information about which attack is happening from different directions still visible in scenes like this that are quite intense. Okay, I can win. So it's really all about distance and timing. Not the easiest of games. We kind of want to make it easy to pick up and sort of difficult to kind of master.
Training camps will be paid dividends early in this match.
It is surprisingly intuitive once you get into the hang of it, how to block with the depth. It's kind of, after playing it for a few months, you know, the solid. When I go back to fighting games, it'd have the block either by pressing a button like Mortal Kombat or pull away. Sometimes I kind of miss the complexity of this, but I think it only works because we've constrained the fighting to only 2 buttons. I think if you had face buttons included, it wouldn't work the same way. Well, I lost. It's kind of hard to make a video and talk and play this at the same time. Our target platform, I'll play one more game. Our target platform is currently the Steam Deck, so it's running on the Steam Deck. And most levels are run 90 frames per second. Some drop down to 60 frames per second on the OLED Steam Deck. Our feeling was that we make it in Unity URP, get it running there, feeling good as a game, and then over the next number of months improve the graphics, do some gameplay improvements, and, you know, go to GDC, start speaking to consoles and chatting about what it would mean to get it ported or released on other systems. This level definitely inspired by Street Fighter anime / Fields of Fate or whatever it's called. That opening scene in the Street Fighter anime. One of the challenges is basically trying to create these environments and characters and keep the polygon pretty consistent. I'm really losing it. We added sort of streak lines to the attacks. You can see they flash white if you haven't landed an attack. Damn it. We think we've got these 4. Maybe the heavy character needs a bit of extra balancing, but we feel like we've got these 4 pretty well balanced. Love to hear what people think. Might disagree, which is cool, but I think we've played 200 hours of this on Steam so far, so definitely happy to hear people's opinions, but at the same time, we also think we know what we want to make.
Round 2, fights.
The long range attacks feel really satisfying when you land them, but you can really get caught out by the close range and the left and right range attacks. Especially again if the difficulty setting as high as I put it. The way the AI works in it, or not AI, but like our little sort of scripts of how our fighters think, our NPC kind of, they watch what you do, they sort of see if you're repetitive, and then there's a kind of a bit in there that doesn't make them too smart, because you can make them quite hard to beat, because they can read your moves. But at the moment it's difficult to win the game if you just spam with one button. You really have to
Player 2 wins.
pick your right distance and attack in a way that makes sense. So that's Onar, our first version, kind of up there for people to play test on Steam. It's free to play at the moment. Our plan with the game is to leave the game there for a couple of months, gather a bit of feedback. If nobody feeds back, then cool, whatever. Just we'll push forward with some graphical updates, some gameplay balancing, and then we want to make it an early access title on Steam, and then try and build a roster and expand from the core 4 archetypes into the variations of each of them. So we introduce new, and we've got some characters that we've already built in Maya. We'll do some kind of like development overview stuff where you can see our kind of creative process, how we design characters and make them, and little cutscenes. And then we'll also talk about the story mode. So we have a script. My background is in film and script writing, and there is a story aspect that you unlock. At the moment it's kind of very simple sort of text-based adventure. Tells you a story, you fight a tournament. That's basically budget, that is the constraint there. But there is a story, there is a lore to do with the game, and we love the project, and we're kind of geared up for this to be a thing that lasts for a long time, and that we just improve it, and from there hopefully people enjoy it and let us know. Okay, thank you very much. Speak to you, and hopefully if anybody's at GDC, see you soon.
High Sun Temple, red versus blue.
Round 1. Fight.